This is Radically Alive Women's Edgecast.
Welcome, Clare Dubois, to the Radically Alive Women Edgecast once again. I'm glad and also touched sitting with you here. It feels like in person, even though we're on a Zoom call right now. And I've reached out to you because you gave an interview in a podcast in 21, and you've also been on the Edgecast with Julia only a few months ago. And what struck me or touched me most on a personal level was the first interview that I listened to, which got me to open up to grief, which I've never experienced to that extent. And I'm feeling I'm feeling my sadness rise right now, speaking to you, not knowing actually what it is about. And it seems like that's actually almost the point to what we're going to talk about, that there is a grieving happening, or a grieving that I have a sense that I might have access now to for the rest of my life. And in, like, on this side here, it correlates to a death, to the topic of death. And that inspired me to connect it with you because I had a sense that you might know, or at least have an idea or an exploration about that. And before diving into the topic, I'm curious, like we just talked about it actually before start pressing the recording button, about letting die the possibility of being prepared. And that already opens so much possibility and so much vulnerability, because I don't know where we go today. And if you had the chance to let die some of your identities in this call right now and connect with Clare Dubois right now, who are you right now before we dive into a discourse about death?
I'm trying to get over the fact that the mere sight of me moves you to tears. It's like, oh my goodness, what did I what did I say that first time around? That it's funny, I have a phrase in my life that is something I try to be, and that is walking permission. Call it walking permission. Like, well, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me again. And I'm very touched by your presence and your touchedness and your willingness to step into the void of not knowing, and um, and see what arises between us, which we shall see. Um, I feel like if we step out of the human realm for a second and we think of ourselves as energetic beings or beings of energy, and in every moment we have the opportunity to be radically present and allow what is moving in us to become conscious, and in the being willing to be present to that, to have the opportunity to transform through awareness energies in our bodies that would usually be unconscious, subconscious, buried, because we live in a society that likes us to be just so, and very few of us are just so. And at this point in our evolution as a species, uh, it's one hell of a friggin' mess. And there is an awful lot of feeling to be done in relationship to that. And there's an awful lot of dying to be done in relationship to that on multiple levels. And the the thing about walking permission is that I feel it's how you've just responded to me, that where I speak from in myself, how much permission I give myself to simply be in the moment and feel what is asking to be felt, brings a kind of radical honesty and safety, because, you know, I've decided very publicly to de-shame emotional process in relationship to awakening, what awakening is. And then I lived that at the front of Treesisters for, you know, a decade, and created a culture within the women's network of radical honesty and transparency, and the willingness to just show up as it is and be that permission for others. So it's nice to know that it still exists, even though I'm 2 years out of Treesisters, almost 2 years. But death, I mean, in this moment, it's weird, you know. I sat last night while Hurricane Milton slammed into Florida, and I was just sitting here listening to the owls in this relative peace. It can change here any moment because we're in peak fire season here in California. There's fire planes going over every day, but I was in this relative sense of peace, and I was feeling so much in my body. I've started to feel Gaia in a different way of late. You know, the Kogi prophesied that if we weren't to turn to her and respect her as mother by June of this year, that basically all hell's going to break loose, because she has to pull herself back into balance. Like she is saying through them that she is going to do what is needed to cleanse herself. Those are the words that they give us. There's going to be an awful lot of death. There's going to be an awful lot of death on multiple levels. There's going to be a lot of physical death. There's going to be a lot of structural death. There's going to be an awful lot of death of ways of being and doing that have not been in service to life. Our economy needs to do its own death in as much as we cannot have an extractive economy on a dying planet anymore. We're going to have a restorative economy on a planet if we're going to have any hope of it, you know, of turning things around. And so there's this, I was sitting in this feeling of like watching a being while a hurricane, like tornadoes hit Florida first and then the hurricane hit. And it was just this feeling of standing in the storm, just standing in the storm of everything that we've created for ourselves in this mess of non-response and playing along with the way that the systems have been set up, whilst knowing what's coming, but somehow refusing to be able to let ourselves actually feel it. Like that feeling of standing in the chaos, standing in the storm, standing in the fire, standing in the mess, and allowing this unveiling and this unveiling and this unveiling, this death to the old that is happening through the willingness to be present to what's really going on. Like, if we're going to allow what's going on to undo us into the possibility of a new way of being that is longing to come forth and that is naturally inside us, because life doesn't want to destroy itself. Life doesn't want to inhabit a dying planet. This isn't the plan. It's like, well, I can't say this isn't the plan, but I don't believe we are living our potential, our purpose in relationship to life or love. And so we're all part of a midwifing into the death of how it's been. That's the biggest context of the death that I feel like we're steering ourselves into, which in and of itself is going to be so multifaceted.
What arises in me when you share, Claire, is that it seems to be that this is unavoidable, that it's going to happen, and yet I am faced, or we are faced with a culture that actually, in my opinion, hasn't learned to die, or has got a big fear of dying and not even, using the word, facing it, like in majority of spaces or places, in my experience, that gets put aside. It's not a topic to face. And here is Mother Earth coming, okay, well, you got to face it now. There's just no out. And yeah, I'm wondering what you have got about that, in this discrepancy in some ways that is about to or is already unfolding.
Gosh, my mind goes in so many different directions. I want to tell a story, and then you're going to have to like pull me back if I go completely off track. So, and why I'm going to tell this story is because it's about compassion for our predicament. Because I think our predicament is a lot to do with inherited momentum. Like consciousness has momentum, like there's generations of us being encultured a specific way to go along with. That's like a river. It's very difficult to just stop and go, oh, we have to change everything, when we've got like so much momentum built up going in a particular way. I was invited for COP 15 years ago to go in Bristol, there was a big gathering going on, and I was invited, like, please, will you come and disrupt it? It's really boring. Everyone's doing PowerPoints. Will you come and do something to shake it up? The room is full of men in suits and students, and everybody's bored. I got this like panic call from a friend, and I was like, okay. So I leapt in the car, and I was driving there going, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? And when I got there, I walked in and I said, okay, can I have 3 volunteers to go and stand in that part of the room? So 3 people got up. I was like, okay, you are indigenous custodians of the rainforest. All right? And they're like, okay. And I said, the rest of you come over here to this side of the room. And I was just like, okay, from here to here, that is the line of human history. And you 3 are just going to feel how it is in the rainforest. And I mean, my historical knowledge is absolutely crap, but it was just like, okay, so here we are back in the whatevers 1,000 years ago. We're struggling with this, we're struggling with that, and I'm getting everybody to walk along this timeline, and they're all there with their heads down, looking at the ground, and it was like famines and disease and food shortages and like difficulty and trying to go to different countries to see if it's any better and blah blah blah. And then we've got the the scientific revolution starting to get a grip on what we think nature is, and thinking of it as a mechanized thing, at which point the 3 custodians of the rainforest started to react like they just didn't feel right. And then we moved into the Industrial Revolution. And what happened was fascinating. Everybody that was walking the line, their heads came up. Their heads came up, and they were just like, oh, and it was this, there's enough food. There's enough food, and there's medicine, and it's not so hard. And we moved, like, if the room was this long, we were kind of here. It would like just the last couple of 100 years of human progress, shall we call it. And it was like a feeding frenzy. It was like our blood, like the epigenetics, like our blood had coped with so much loss and instability and death in childbirth and like all the things. I mean, it can all still happen, but so much has been made comfortable for us in the last couple of 100 years. So much uncertainty is gone, so much privilege is there, so much abundance is here. And it was like, everybody was just like, oh, and it was like watching people who'd been starving forever suddenly like arriving into the horn of plenty, like everything was there. And as that happened, the people in the rainforest were like doubled over, wanting to throw up. Like there was this just complete shift from a pristine environment to a desecrated environment that was the expression of humanity's desecration of the natural world in order to feed its hunger for stuff, essentially, and more than stuff, like what we call progress, a lot of which we've massively benefited from. And then we're standing at this point, and it was like, how much of this are we ready or able to let go of? Like right now, look, they are doubled over in agony. The rainforests are burning, the ice caps are melting, the blah, 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 everything we know. And everyone's just like, but we've just got all this stuff and we want more. Like, we just want more. And it was such a moment. I mean, I had no idea how it was going to happen, but everyone was just like, you can't take this away from us. Like, and I really had this sense of, it's our blood. It's the momentum in our blood. It's the epigenetics. It's the history of lack that is just being fed. It's like we're not ready. We're just not ready for where we are. Mm-hmm. We're not ready to let it go. We haven't grown up enough to be able to perceive the enormity of where we are. And it was this extraordinary moment of, wow, we have to have so much compassion for ourselves. There are so many reasons why we're not behaving in the way that one would hope we were behaving, that would be commensurate to the disaster that's unfolding, that we're creating for ourselves. But there are many, many layers of hidden complexity in the why we are where we are. And part of it, I believe, really is cultural momentum and epigenetic momentum away from lack and towards this just need to, like, someone who's been in the desert for 100 years, suddenly just like, I want to eat everything, I want it all. And so compassion for where we are is really needed. It's really needed because on top of our predicament, judging ourselves really harshly is not gonna help. And then, in this place, I always come back to the same thing. How honest can we be with ourselves? How honest can we be? And you've just been honest. It's just like, our culture isn't set up for death. Our culture is set up for, it's not set up for noisy feelings even. It's not set up for honesty, frankly. It's set up for towing the line. It's set up for, who do I need to be in order to belong? Mm-hmm. Because our communities are so broken down, because our cultures are so broken down, because the way that we've been living has pulled us away from the land, away from our belonging to nature, and away from each other. And so then in that dissociated state from our roots at the deepest level, we are left trying to do the thing that makes us safe. And that seems to be a lot, towing the line, being the thing that works, trying to be the thing that doesn't cause others to push us away. Don't want to be too noisy, don't want to break down, and don't want to grieve, don't want to name what's happening, don't want to risk being too much, don't want to express in a way that is commensurate to everything, because nobody wants to know, nobody wants to be part of that, nobody wants to, like, can we just keep carrying on with the fake smile and the believing everything's fine? And I think it's a lot to do with a loss of belonging and a culture of profound unsafety, that we can't live honestly to our own souls. And if we can't do that, how do we cope with death? How do we face into it?
I think it comes back to what you're saying at the beginning, this permission to be. As if I haven't learned how to be and to break through that and to let all these other false masks, I call them, for example, die, then I haven't learned to go through what then I would call it it's a mini dying process. Every time I express whatever is alive, then there's a mini dying process happening, because I'm shedding something, I'm letting something run through, I'm composting something within myself to let new information come through in the transformational process of it. And when I heard you speak just before, it reminds me of something that is currently happening here, which is the addiction to more, like the addiction to intensity, the addiction to fixing, the addiction to, you said like, oh, there's more and there's more, and it just doesn't end. And it seems to me that it's well, at the moment in my own exploration, it feels linked to, if I cannot connect to what is true here and the love that is already accessible through the allowing the feelings to flow, for example, the grief, that is for me a direct, it's like a jack into love. So if I haven't learned that, then I keep on seeing whether I can find it out there somewhere, because that's how I came into the world. And yeah, it sounds like you've got something new.
Well, it's what we've all been taught. We've been taught about original sin, not original beauty. Pat McCabe, Woman Stands Shining, the Diné Navajo Nation talk about their people arrive into original beauty. They arrive not into sin, not thinking that we're flawed from the get-go, not thinking that we have to, like, I mean, imagine if we lived in a culture, the white culture was rooted in love primarily, overtly, where you belonged, and you belonged to your community, and you belonged to nature, and it's safe to be you, so it's safe to be inside. You're held in a way that allows you to touch and discover who's in here, rather than our culture, which fundamentally, especially if you're female, but now it's like female and anything other than white male, like we're born into rejection, and we're born into massively traumatized bloodlines of trauma that's not been addressed at the deepest level for thousands of years, because our culture doesn't do that. There's an amazing podcast on the oh my god, was it the Emerald Tablet podcast? Is that what it's called? On trauma and the vegetative gods. Just want to put that out there, because it talks about historically and culturally how communities around the world used to deal together with trauma in the most brilliant way. It was just like, oh my god, that's how it could be. We could actually make it part of our culture to face into this rather than suppress it.
Mm-hmm.
The suppression of our feelings is the root of profound social and physiological sickness. It's like a fundamental rejection of who we are. And when we do that, then we have to look outside all the time to try and figure out who we are, or how to be in a way that reduces the risk of rejection. And it's like, yeah, our species is terrified of rejection because of the loss of belonging to our communities and to the land.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I love Mary Reynolds Thompson's work on the forest and the mountains and the rivers as our ancestors, like how we can plug ourselves back into something that is much bigger than us, that we have been birthed out of, that we are part of, that is waiting for us to wake up to, so that the context of our human lives sits inside a much greater enfoldment of a greater consciousness that's been here for billions of years, that has extraordinary wisdom of which we are a part, that we can relax into, that can help us understand who we are and what we are. Because we don't really know what we are. Like, mm-hmm. I don't think humans have grokked on any level, really, what we could be. I mean, we only use a fraction of our brains, but we've dumbed ourselves down to such an extent, especially now. keep hearing that humans have the smallest experience of what it is to be human than ever before.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we have psychic and emotional, psychospiritual capacities to connect to everything in a spectacular way, and we're not taught to use them. And, you know, all around us, life is showing us how to die. You know, it's showing us the forests drop their leaves every year, the deciduous forest. They give their all, they let it go, they let that whole iteration of them go, they drop down into their roots and they go fallow for however long it is. They just let go of that whole iteration and they wait until it's time, until something calls them for the sap to rise. And they'll rise and they'll come into being in a whole new way. It's like the dragonflies, the butterflies, the lizards, the snakes, all these different creatures that drop a version of themselves.
And you don't even have to go out there, right? You can start right here as a woman that goes through that cycle every month. And yeah, I notice, you know, my sadness rising again about that, like how little I as a woman have learned to go through that death consciously. And I was just talking to a sister the other day saying, how would that be if we as women were in such things as red teens and would consciously go into this death process for that week and be nurtured by our community while facing this shadow that needs to be churned over for whatever next is to come. And then there is actually space being made for that because nature is already reflecting it inside of me as a woman. And then this life that was a possibility can die and something new can emerge as it does every month.
I mean, imagine if that was our culture. Like that was the Native American culture, the First Nations of this continent here. You know, the red tent, the women's lodge, the moon lodge was, you know, warring nations apparently knew that if they wanted to take another village down, the first thing they needed to destroy was the red tent, was the moon lodge, because that was where the wisdom arose from. The women were entrusted with the dreaming at the dark moon to bring forth the wisdom for the tribes. And, you know, I am in the greatest death of my life. And I am loving every minute of it at the moment. You know, not just leaving Treesisters and leaving a frankly insane way of being in the world, trying to teach about feminine practices, trying to teach about balance and living the most unbalanced I ever did in this incarnation, trying to do too much for too many people. But it coincided with menopause. And I never was I knew the feminine mystery teachings about menstruation. I knew what was possible, and I couldn't get there. I think I had such a fundamental argument with being a woman because of my upbringing, which was incredibly misogynistic and abusive. Like I think I was angry with the whole process of being female. So, you know, Alexandra Pope, who's the one that taught me, she would talk about the necessity, the deep necessity, especially as you're approaching menopause, to really do that resting and that composting at the dark moon, to really start taking care of your body, to really reduce stress, to really allow for the fact that you're turning into this whole next phase. And if you turn towards menopause and you've not addressed your trauma, which is the opportunity of each cycle, of the menstrual cycle, that when it comes time to die, she would say, there will be a gift left for you on the beach. You know, the tide comes in, you ovulate, the tide goes out, it leaves a gift on the beach. That's your inner spiritual teacher as a woman telling you that this is the thing that you work on this month. And I used to love that. And I used to be present to the gift on the beach, the whatever it was, that it was there. But I couldn't let myself rest. I would deal with it. I couldn't let myself rest. So I did the opposite. I steamed up to the brink of menopause working harder and harder and harder and burning myself out and getting sicker and sicker. And so then when menopause hit, that impulse in me, the menopausal impulse in me, pulled the rug out from underneath my feet. And it's like, for the first time, I understood what Alexandra Pope meant by there is a spiritual teacher inside you. It was like, oh, that feminine impulse has taken over my life. She's taken me out. She was just like, no, you're done. You can't say no, I can. That's it. The only thing that's going to come out of your mouth from here on in is no, until I've got you back. And so, and it's the ultimate death. It is the ultimate death. It's like your brain goes to mush, your body starts misbehaving, you can't think straight, you can't function in the world that you used to, the way you used to. Nothing is the same. And inside, you're being propelled into this void of enormity. It's like the shift into the cosmic brain. And it requires you to let go of a whole way of being. Like the who you've been before just dissolves around you. You can't keep it together. And if you try, it really hurts. So, and I think women are hugely blessed. I mean, everyone's just like, oh my God, menopause, it's so hard. It is. It's really hard unless you want to be undone. Unless you understand that the way that we've been conditioned has interfered profoundly with our ability to let go and transform and allow something greater than us to have its way with us. If you're like me and you were so caught in the momentum of the insanity, then when something else comes in and just removes you, it's just like, oh, thank God, somebody's like, I have taken myself out. There is the possibility now of a complete death, and I want that death. Like, I want to deal with my trauma, which is what I'm doing now, but I want, most of all, I want to die to the version of me that has colluded with the world in the way that it is. And I want to allow for something deeply authentic that is actually of my soul and not just a reaction to what's happened to me. Like to dig enough for something else to birth out of that death. And it'll come because I'm holding space for it. But it's like, oh my God, that death, this death feels glorious.
It brings me joy hearing you describe your death process so specifically and so they're picturesque, I guess. And like what sits in me is like there is such clarity in you to do that. Like you've chosen to face that. You say, I could not face it. And it seems to me that often when some of those, when this clarity comes through, it comes through when a catastrophic event happens, or when it's too much where the body just can't do anything else. There's a collapse. And what I'm interested in is like how to cultivate a way of life, where you make dying part of your everyday, so that you don't have to hit rock bottom. And maybe that's what the human species is experiencing right now. And how to, I guess it's like looking at sustainability, or looking at like the sustainability of this physical body. Like, because what you're saying is, it's like, if I look at it earlier, if I looked at some of those things earlier, then I wouldn't have hit that. And everyone has the choice, and not everyone makes the choice, or possibly can make the choice. And I'm curious if there's anything you've got there for women out there that are so confined in their constructs, that are leading a life that they think is the life to live, even though their body is collapsing inside. And it seems to me that the human body can go a long way until it actually gives up. And it scares me. It scares me how much a woman can wear herself down until something has to shift. And in terms of, I guess, like moving forward or looking at the planet that also is collapsing right now in a similar fashion, it's like, okay, how can this go in a regenerative way, that actually there's a wholesome process happening here, and yeah, for example, expressing feelings is part of my culture.
Womankind has been taught to be a slave. It's not seen that way, but it's how I perceive it. We've not been celebrated in our power or intelligence. We had, if you're a Western woman, we had 300 years of the witch burnings. Like, how can we do so much damage to womankind that she will never recover? It's almost like that was the brief that the church came up with. Women were the healers. Women were the medicine women, those that helped bring life into the world, the midwives, those who understood how to be in relationship with nature. And ultimately, anybody that had money, I mean, the witch burnings, they started very much more specifically and just became an industry, a women killing industry to make money for the church. But it's like, we have been encultured epigenetically with a profound fear of being female. That is in every feminine body. I mean, it's in every masculine body, frankly. And then we've all been, incarnating in and out of male and female bodies. So it's hugely complex. But the lineages, the genetic lineages, that memory that comes through the female lines is kind of imprinted with, if you think for yourself, if you're connected to nature, if you're a woman of power, if you're a free thinker or somebody on your own, or like any of those things, you will die. That's in our genes. It's in the genetic encoding in our bodies. And to live as a woman, you are required to be A, B, C, D, a mother in the kitchen, not working. It's changed now, but it's changed in such a way that the reason why women are killing themselves by overworking is because we're trying to outmen the men. We're trying to be in a feminine cyclical body, linear, which means you don't ebb and flow with the tides. You just keep delivering on a moment-to-moment basis, just the same way that agriculture just plows over the seasons. We don't pay any attention to seasons or the rhythms of animals or the rhythms of fish or the rhythms of anything. We want what we want right now, and we want it on our own timing, and we want that convenience, and we'll force the soil, and we'll force the trees, and we'll force the animals, and we'll force everything because we want it now. And so we have, I believe, it's one of the reasons why I founded Treesisters, we have suppressed the feminine principle. We have overlooked the ebbs and flow of life and our relationship to her to such a degree. Like, patriarchy in its most sick state has completely dominated nature to within an inch of its life. And the only way back from that is to reinstate the feminine principle. And that's what the Kogis say. Unless we turn back to mother and understand mother, like the one who gives us everything, I don't know, they say it's over, but it's pretty friggin' terrifying. And they say that only things that originate in feminine principles will exist after 2026. Only that arises out of feminine principles. What's feminine principles? That nurtures life, that nurtures togetherness, that nurtures connection, that weaves the fabric of life back together again. That originates from reciprocity and respect and reverence, feminine principles, So I feel like women, this is what I've been doing, get to do it to death, or get to do it to almost death, get to try and be a man until we can't be a man anymore. It's like we're almost like trying to burn it out of our system for me, it was like, how far can I actually go? how close to death can I be? I almost died. The level of burnout that I put myself through was so extreme, and I kept going, and I was multiple things going on, like overwork is one thing, but severe poisoning was another. And so,
and it's not just the physical expression of it, like internally it's the emotional pain that is not being expressed is so high that I can only think about something other than suicide. That's also part of the cultural toxicity that's alive in an expression of it. So it's not just an external, like I can observe it, like I have this happening inside of me, like I have shifted and changed myself so much. I have put all these different identities there to function. I have all these mechanisms to not express what's really going on inside of me because there's no one out there, in my belief, that can be with that. So what's the point of even being here? And it's like it's almost, it's like this slow death, or it's like this. I mean, this is my reality, and I know that's not for everybody, but I know that there's a lot of women out there that go through, and men also, that go through this reality that, like, why would I be in this world? Like, what is there for me if it's so tense and painful, and I don't know where to go and what to do with this? And then some do go, and some are hanging in there and keeping on having this process of, shall I die or shall I live, and not doing either fully in some ways.
I think that's most of us. I mean, I don't know how many of us are living fully, or how many of us know how to die fully. Moment to moment die fully, or menstrually know how to die fully, or at the end, in any ending in our lives, know how to turn into it and trust it. It's like, it's big shit, this. Like, it's, we're just not taught how to live healthily, and we're not taught how to die well. We're not celebrated in who and what we are. We're celebrated if we do this in this way, over here, this little box of what acceptable is, and God, I used to call myself, back in the early days of Tree Sister, the woman who cries on Facebook Live. Like, all you had to do was put a camera on me and I would just start crying. And for multiple reasons. One, because the topic I was talking about always was climate change and the need for reforestation, and everything that I was passionate about. But also because I was just so terrified of being seen, and I was choosing to be a front person. And so for me, every time the camera was on me was like a death. It was like having my skin ripped off. It was just like, oh my God, here I am in all my inadequacies and all my not knowing, and I have zero capacity to run this organization. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm doing it anyway because it has to be done. And it was just like searing shame and searing fear. And, when I used to get up on stage, I would have diarrhea, I would be vomiting beforehand. I mean, it was like my body was totally in the, if I am seen, I am going to die. I mean, I just lived the witch burnings for the first 5 years of Tree Sisters. I mean, I'm still pretty wobbly when I have to get up on stage, and it takes me, every time I get off stage, I cry rather than on stage. But it's like my nervous system, it's not just my shit that I'm dealing with. It is the feminine. It is my mother's lineage. It is all the different ways that we have been taught to make ourselves small, to collude with a societal lie that says, women should be a certain way. Emotion is weak. Feeling is weak. The fact that they're so emotional proves their weakness. And it was just like, well, actually, no. The fact that we're emotional proves that we are strong. Like, what is stronger? Suppressing the shit out of it because you're too frightened to feel it? Suppressing the shit out of it because feeling it would mean that you'd have to become honest with yourself? Feeling it would mean that you actually get to understand how unhappy you are, or how misdirected you are, or how lost you are, or how ashamed you are, which gives you the gateway to making profound change in your life. Because if you're not going to feel, and if you think it is braver and stronger not to feel, then let's look at the world and see where that's got us. War and reactivity, massive reactivity, because we can't deal with our feelings. We can't actually just feel heartbreak and then drop under that and look at why do people do what they do? What is the level of pain there? No, we don't. It's just, if you're going to hit me, I'm going to hit you harder. Well, if you're going to hit me harder, I'm going to hit you harder. Well, where's that getting us? You know, and the other opportunity is, can we dismantle? Can we figure out how to dismantle the reactivity that is on top of grief, rage and loss, that's on top of huge grief. And grief, if it's not allowed to flow, will turn into violence and rage and welcome to our world. So for me, it's like, I fought doing Treesisters. I didn't want to do something just for women because I felt like it needed to be everybody, but life kept saying through the women. And in the end, I was like, you know what? It's because we've actually been given permission to feel, even though it's been labeled weak. Women are allowed to feel in our weakness and be emotional. It's not understood what it actually is or what it makes possible for us in the transformational capacity of what it makes possible for us. But we have that gift of cultural acceptance of our emotionality, and men don't. Men are supposed to be non-emotional. Men aren't supposed to cry. Men are shamed if they are, you know, I mean, it's just, we're lucky in that way. It must be so hard to be a man, an emotional man, a softer man, or a more feminine man, when the culture around you wants to slam you and tell you got to be a big boy and show up in this particular way. It's like, but it's all the feminine, and it's all women finding that our strength is in our softness and our permeability and our ability to feel what is going on so deeply that we can channel it and express it in ways that can get through the barrier that has been the defense against the feminine. And men daring to also allow that softer side of themselves that is deeply intuitive, receptive, relational, creative, intimate, has that softness that can feel where is life taking us? What's the opportunity here? That unless we're all willing to drop the hardening that we've all gone through in the barbaric treatment of life, women aren't going to arise into the fullness of their own sovereignty. Men aren't going to arise into the fullness of their own sovereignty. And we don't have a hope in hell of figuring out who we are for each other as genuinely real expressions of masculine and feminine and all the genders in between. It's like, because we're stuck in these boxes of supposed to be, because this is what is culturally normal. And I mean, if one thing is beneficial about the times that we live in, what is culturally normal is changing. What is culturally acceptable is changing. Who we think we are is changing. But wow.
Yeah, and what I get from your sharing also is that the old way would be to do it alone as a woman, and that doesn't work any longer either. So it's this also awakening to what I imagine you were achieving with Treesisters, even though you got burned out. But it's okay, this is woman together. I don't have all the pieces by myself. I'm only one voice, and this life is a co-creation. The tree doesn't just stand by itself and live. That there is a exchange. There is a mycelium that's happening that's creating the life, and to start owning that and recognizing that and feeling that, and and that requires the grief of that persona that is pushing through, that is in me rooted in the masculine, so in the unhealed masculine so strongly, to I can do it by myself, and the belief that there is actually no one out there that wants to be in community with me or that wants to co-create with me. And it's shedding those parts as well, like letting it go and going through the grief of that, and keep on letting myself be touched, keep on letting my and also keep on letting myself be touched, not just by my sisters around me, but also by nature, like you say. Like how do I let her come closer? How can she come in here?
You know, how can she come in here? It's like, ugh, I so miss Treesisters. I so miss the community. I so miss the sisterhood. I so miss the forest floor. We'd call it the forest floor because it was all the million invisible ways in which we can uphold each other, like the trees do. But
and a million ways to also call forth the death, right? To be by a sister's side and say, are you willing to let this part die now? Like, and I'm with you here.
yeah, and to have the permission and the solidarity, and to me, it was like the ultimate wisdom of Treesisters was you don't do this on your own. You don't even try. You recognize that trying to do it on your own is severely limited, and it's unkind to ourselves. Like we need to hold hands. You know, I remember hearing the story of Italian women who were going to be burned as witches, who would hold hands on the beach and walk into the water and drown themselves rather than be hung as witches. It's like, if we're going to die, we'll do it together. You know, like as soon as you've got someone else's hand in yours, something else feels possible. When you've got hundreds or thousands of women and you're all together and you're all in common purpose, everything feels possible. You know, I used to say a woman on her own is a force of nature, but in community, you've no idea. You know, we could change the face of the world, and I still believe that that's absolutely possible. But it's like, how do we let nature in? Well, the irony is we are nature. This only exists because I've been eating soil all my life in the form of plants, and breathing in the trees in the form of oxygen, and drinking rainwater. You know, we are it on the inside. There is no part of us that is not nature. The only thing that we've done is be taught how to use our minds in such a way that creates the illusion of separation, and then become so physiologically traumatized that we can't feel anymore. So how do we let it in? To me, it's like, how do I let go of the defenses I've put up against her?
So how do I let that die? Like that's the process that I see. It's like, how can I let all of those fall away, let them go, put them into the river?
And you know, one of the ways to do that is to feel, you know, when you sit there and I'm sitting here looking at this gorgeous landscape of this forest outside my window, like, just like when I'm sitting in front of a human being and I can't connect, when I'm sitting in front of somebody and I just feel numb, or I feel shy, or I feel ashamed, or I feel contorted in my social awkwardness, just in the way I sit with a tree and I look at the tree but I can't feel it, or I look at a view and I know that it's beautiful but I can't feel it. It's like, okay, what am I feeling? What am I feeling? Can I put my attention into the layer of whatever it is that is insulating me from being able to let her in? Okay, it's numbness. Okay, can I put my full awareness into the numbness? Can I make it fully conscious and keep asking, keep invoking, keep willing to come in, keep willing myself to be able to show up? And then, you know, that'll change. It'll become something else. It'll become awkwardness, or it'll become shame, or it'll become fear, or it'll become grief. Okay, can I, whilst still inviting nature in, can I feel that layer? Can I press my awareness into it, feel it in its totality? Because when you meet something with pure presence, it changes. The static will dissolve, will change, or the layer will soften, and then it's like, okay, and what's underneath that? And bit by bit, you, like, by becoming present to and willing to feel the layers that are there, they're there because there's been an absence, there's been a harm, there's been a something that's caused them to get stuck in time, like frozen. When they're met with consciousness, they can just transform, and then the next learn, it can transform. And all that's asking, life is saying, come here, just feel me, just feel me, just feel me. Feel me without trying to change me. Feel me without trying to change me. Just feel me. Let my need be met. And when it is, transformation happens. It's a death of one way of being. It's the something else becomes born into possibility because you've been willing to become present, aware, and feel whatever is asking to be felt. And that to me is I think of it as alchemy. It's like a completely extraordinary alchemical process that we're in, can be in on a moment to moment basis if we're willing to feel what is asking to be felt. Like that's my basic agreement with life. Okay, you set it up, I'll feel it. All right, you've asked me to feel it. Okay, I'll feel it. Like that's it. Like, okay, I trust that the feeling of whatever it is the next thing that I'm capable of managing. Therefore, it will unveil something that is ready to come. Therefore, I will just continue to show up and feel what is asking to be felt and grow as a result. That's my basic way of being in the world. Very, very simple.
And you are coming full circle in some ways to, while we're coming to an end of this course, what you said at the beginning, because we're set up in this world to be sinful. And it seems to me that it's exactly those sinful parts of ourselves that are stopping us to feel are the ones to let go. I noticed my sadness arising because I could feel the sinful part that would kind of go, or is this interview worthwhile for the people out there to listen to now? Did I like all the different pieces that I can go into, and I let myself be touched. Like there is a grief in me that I go there, that this is even a consideration, that a woman speaking to a woman about life and death is I'm even questioning this. Like it's like this is an impulse. That there was an impulse, and it is.
Yeah, but it's your blood, honey. We've been taught. It's like it's in us. We've been taught to doubt ourselves, to hide ourselves, to expect rejection, to expect that it's not enough, to be sent down by other women. It's loud. It's really loud, and it's just like being able to put your hand on your heart and you go, I'm just going to show up. I'm going to show up. And then when these feelings arise, I'm going to just acknowledge them. It's just like, okay, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Like sending that apology down the bloodline. Like, I'm so sorry we've been treated this way. I'm so sorry for the women who in my lineage who are struggling with me speaking right now because they think I'm endangering myself. That's what your blood is doing. It's trying to protect you. Don't stick your head above the parapet. God, that's why I would throw up before going on stage. I'm going to die. Like my body isn't in present time because my body isn't made of present time. My body is made of all the DNA of all my ancestors. We are imprinted deeply with their experiences, both positive and negative, but the negative ones, the unprocessed trauma yells, don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. Hide. Stay small. Don't believe in yourself. How can you believe in yourself? You're just a woman.
Yeah, and what I get from all of that is actually like by allowing the conscious dying to happen and grieving the process of it, then your body will be made of present time. Then you're here, and then life can happen, and death can happen continuously.
It's like allowing the light and the energy of your consciousness to press into the lie. Like this crumpled part of you that's sitting there just like, oh my God, do I even dare bring this forward? It's like, we don't know what she's made of, but she's in there. And when you can turn to her and it's just like, I am right with you. Okay, like her nervous system needs to know, it's okay. I get it. I get it. Thank you. It's okay. And when you said a minute ago, the sinful part of me, it's like that That is the biggest grief of all.
Mm-hmm.
That we think any part of us is sinful just for being alive, just for
Mm-hmm.
being. That's the wound of the religions that many of us have been birthed into, the lie of being less than God,
Yeah.
not being sacred, not just not being sacred, but being born into original sin. It's like your feelings aren't sin; they're not sinful. They're real because you've inherited them, but they're lies. Anything other than we are sacred parts of a sacred universe of absolute pure potential, desiring to know ourselves fully as love and nature. Anything other than that is a lie. And we can show up as that lie because we believe it, or we can show up because we've been so damn harmed and so traumatized and so unsupported to feel our feelings and come back to ourselves. Pain just recycles again and again and again. But it's not who we are. It's what's happened to us. That ultimately always is the same thing. It's just asking for love. It's just asking for love. It's asking to be brought back into the family. It's asking to be brought back into ourselves. It's asking to be held and loved and nurtured. And we can do this. This is what we're for. You know, the human heart is a majestic, astonishing vessel of unconditional love. We're made that way, and we're, you know, no matter what happens to the planet, no matter what happens politically, no matter what happens, blah, 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 doesn't change the fact that at a soul level, we are here to experience and discover the immensity of our capacity to love, to hold it all, the whole blinking mad mess of it all, to be big enough to hold it all, to not judge it, just to love, just to love.
Thank you, Claire. This feels like a natural end to the discourse, and I know there's more, and I'm touched by your clarity, and I'm touched by your, again, giving women permission to carve out different pathways for themselves and taking a stand for the lie, for the monster inside of us that we believe we are at times, and shifting into a different reality. Thank you.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for believing in yourself enough to give this conversation a chance. I think there's been a huge amount of richness here, and I hope it really serves everybody that takes the time to listen.
Thank you.
Imagine that you could become so radically alive that you would create not only the life that you love, but also the culture that comes through you, that your being is designed to create. This is what this Edgecast is about. This is what this Edgecast aims to inspire in you as you listen to this right now. And this could be a daunting thing. And daunting is not a problem. Daunting simply means it's new, it's scary, and why not do it anyway? This is where evolution lies. Evolution is there where the fear is. So we're inviting you to join us on this journey and make it your own. You can do this by, keep diving into these free episodes, the episodes that we're gifting from a place of abundance and necessity. And you can also become a member, benefiting from some special content that we upload in the membership area. But really, the membership portal is for you to take more responsibility so that we can keep creating this content. And if you were willing to step even closer into the circle, you could join our in-person live offerings online. There are many transformative workshops and trainings that are on offer from various radically alive women across the globe. and you can find all of our offerings on our website, radicallyalivewomen.com. This Edgecast is brought to you by Radically Alive Women, a team of women consisting currently of Julia Neumann, Millicent Hoey, Annika Korsten, and Hannah Abuzara. See you soon.